So, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Pierre Arwidson. Pierre is the Deputy Director of Prevention and the Health Promotion Department at Santé Publique France. And you were talking about the challenges in implementing low-risk drinking guidelines. Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I must first think it's a teamwork. It's not only me, and especially Guillemette, who helped me a lot. So I will talk about a short story about the 40 years of installation of low-risk drinking guidelines in France. So in 1984, it was the first media campaign with number of glasses, and it was in French, un verre ça va, trois verres, bonjour les dégâts. And there were 8 prevention spots, not talking about health, only talking about social situation, and if you drink too much, you will become ridiculed. So on that one, it's a date, and the woman says, if you drink too much, you will not perform. The idea was to be funny, to be funny and to use humor. And the wine growers were not happy at all, and they hijacked the slogan, 1 glass is fine, 3 glasses, hello damage. And one of them was, 1 drink opens the way, 3 drinks bring joys. And the other one was, 1 drink is good, but 3 drinks is better. So the next step was a conference in Paris. And I wanted to show that because I want to say that WHO has never emitted any drinking guidelines, never. But the only slogan, that was Europe, WHO Europe, the only slogan was less is better. And I remember that Marc Danzon, who was one of the former director, he came to talk to me in Paris when he came. And he said, we are really annoyed that you say that those guidelines are coming from WHO. He was very annoyed. Other countries will say, why do you say, we don't drink alcohol in our country? Please stop it. And there was a European charter on alcohol that was adopted in Paris, and no word about lower drinking guidelines, no word. But there is another way that WHO was using guidelines, but it's about the promotion of brief intervention, screening and brief intervention. And that was done by an international team with countries like Australia, England, etc. And in that document, that WHO document, it was said, but it was in clinical settings, if you do drink, please do not consume more than 2 drinks per day, and always make sure that you avoid drinking at least 2 days of the week, even in small amounts. But that recommendation came from a country like Australia, England, and it was just adopted inside WHO document, but for clinical settings. And in France, there was a great phase 4 trial, international one that was done by WHO with many countries like Australia, France. And in France, there was a team in ANPA, that now is Addiction France, that is represented in the room by Benjamin. And there was a working group named Less is Better, led by Philippe Michaud, who participated in this WHO phase 4 study to disseminate screening and brief intervention in France. And one of the studies was to compare different ways to promote SBI in France, like community action or financial incentive for GPs or phone marketing. Phone marketing. And that is one of the way the low-risk drinking guidelines entered France. And in 2017, we were asked to work on public discourse on alcohol, and we used that opportunity to do a lot of work, but also to do the first modeling on alcohol on French population data. And the work was, we did a public call for application to recruit an expert group. We had auditions of stakeholders, and the modeling was done by Jürgen Rehm and Kevin Schild, and they are known in the whole world. And they had done it for 7 countries in Europe, but not in France. But they offered us this modeling for France. And we also did a qualitative study, and we discovered that having different recommendation for women and men was not accepted. Women didn't want to have another figure for another recommendation than men. So we used that information to clarify that. And what was behind that is still Jürgen Rehm, and maybe you know about the concept of acceptable risk of harm attributable to alcohol consumption in a given country, lifelong attributable death. Maybe you know that the study about the risk acceptability by the population, like Paul Slovic, they say that for environmental risks that you don't choose, it's 1 in a million. We don't accept more than 1 death in a million of people exposed to a risk that you don't choose. If it's a behavior that you choose, like you drive, you accept 1 death out of 1,000. On 1,000 people who are driving, we don't want more than 1 people who is dying of it. But for alcohol, and it's closer to 1 out of 100 of lower risk drinking guidelines. And Jürgen Rehm and Room and Laschenmayer had a paper very influential on that. And what did our group of experts state? They said, as it was said before, there is no safe drinking level, especially about for the reason of breast cancer risk that starts very low. And if you decide to drink alcohol, we said 15 grams per day or 100 grams per week, and I heard it a few minutes ago. And the experts have chosen between a risk of attributable death between 1 out of 100 and 1 out of 1,000. And of course, with days without drinking. And as I said, the same lower risk drinking guidelines for men and women. It was a lesson learned from the qualitative study. And about that, we created a new indicator that is now at the heart of our surveillance of population drinking. And it's the level above. Donc, here you see, this is 2017. You have in blue the proportion of people drinking more than 2 drinks a day. In green, proportion of people drinking more than 10 drinks a week. And in red, proportion of people drinking more than 5 days a week. And the blue line is above the low-risk drinking guidelines. And we follow them, and it's our indicator of success on long term. So after that, we had the experts say 10 drinks a week, not more. Then we had to go to find the most appropriate wording for the low-risk drinking guidelines. And we come with this: maximum 10 drinks per week with days off, maximum 2 drinks a day with days without, maximum 2 drinks per day, but not every day. And at the end, the final slogan is for your health, no more than 2 alcohol drinks per day and not every day. We eliminated the 10 drinks because it was perceived as too high quantity for light drinkers. So it should work. This is the Ravage campaign of 2019 that embarks those low-risk drinking guidelines. And I will show it to you if it works.
Ceci est une publicité contre les ravages de l'alcool. Et il n'y a pas d'accident de voiture. Pas de type qui rentre en rampant. Personne ne se réveille à côté d'un sombre inconnu. Et il n'y a même pas de baston devant un bar. Parce qu'il n'y a pas besoin d'en arriver là pour que l'alcool fasse des ravages. Au-delà de 2 verres par jour, vous augmentez vos risques d'hémorragie cérébrale, de cancer et d'hypertension. Pour votre santé, l'alcool, c'est maximum 2 verres par jour et pas tous les jours.
So we did a study, a longitudinal study, we followed 4,000 respondents before the campaign, and then just as T1 just after the campaign. And you can see that we also had a new respondent because we know that there is a questionnaire effect. People who have already had a questionnaire, they are sensibilized, they don't, and we had at T2 6 months after the campaign. So we followed the same people, and there was a better knowledge of the maximum 2 drinks a day guideline, a better knowledge of long-time risk as brain hemorrhage and hypertension, and a significant decrease in at-risk drinking in women. But those 3 benefits only appeared just after the campaign, So the idea is we should never stop doing campaigns. We should never stop. So in conclusion, we know that the lower risk drinking guidelines have critics, like World Health Organization and Sally Caswell. Sally Caswell did a paper in 2012, and she says if the policy is only giving drinking guidelines, it's not a good policy. You should have more than that. And one representative of NGO, because it has an effect of normalization effect. And one representative of an NGO financed by the alcohol industry named With Moderation, his name was Alexis Capitaine, told me once that we did not advocate loudly enough our guidelines. So this, we must think about that. And our 2017 lower risk drinking guidelines were not only one of the 10 recommendations. We are also many recommendations on taxation of alcohol and how to regulate advertisement, especially on the internet. So the low risk drinking guidelines were only a small part of our avis d'expert. And are the low risk drinking guidelines effective? At least the 2019 Ravage campaign promoting those guidelines was able to reduce consumption of at-risk women, to raise knowledge on long-term risks, but only in the short terms. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Pierre. No, I would like to open the floor for any questions for clarification. If you have comments for debate, we can take that later at the round table, but any questions for clarification? Also for our online participants, no? I think some point that you mentioned about whether low-risk drinking guidelines add to normalization of alcohol in society is a nice one to take up later in our debate. My question to you is, how do the guidelines work for women that are pregnant and like age limits as well? I do know in the Netherlands, for example, you can drink until you can drink as of 18, but in Belgium, you can already drink as of 16. So in a way, it's also part of the guidelines, no? So what is this in France?
In the avis d'expert, we have all those situations listed. No alcohol when you are pregnant, no alcohol when you are young. And it's all listed. I didn't say it there, but it's all detailed. It's all detailed.
And what is the age limit in France?
I don't remember.
18. Okay.
The right 18. To buy. The right to buy.
Right to buy 18.
Yeah. But in the United States, it's the right to drink. 21 years old, not the same.
Yeah. And in Belgium is 16, no?
Right to buy or to get it for free. But it's never like not even with illegal drugs to use.
Yeah. So from the microphone, yes. Who has a microphone?
Yeah.
Oh, there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Peter Rice from EuroCare. I'm very interested in the idea of the measure. So you said two glasses a day. So we have quite a big variation in beer strength and sometimes in wine. Did the public understand the idea of a measure, of a glass And was that standardized? Did you try to do that, or did you just leave that up to people's general opinion?
So in France, it's 10 grams. Each measure is 10 grams. And we have, for a long time, many graphics explaining that. And maybe in the classic cafes, it's those 10 grams that are used in standard servings. So we were maybe helped by I would say, most of the cafes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes. One more question.
European Partners for the Environment. My question is about...
Yes, I think there's some music that's... Yes. No, we cannot yet. Can the microphone switched on? Yes.
The concept of risk has only a short-term effect. Is that correct to interpret it in that way? And is it inherent in the setup of the campaign?
No, the risk introduced by the research on risk acceptation, and it's lifelong risk of being exposed. And maybe the first campaign, the French 94 campaign, it was the risk when you drink 3 glasses in the same moment. It's not the same. But most of the risk is lifetime, calculated on lifetime. But the Australian guidelines, they also have 2 different figures. One is long-term chronic drinking, and the other one is when you have an accident because of drinking, an accident, something happening because you drank too much at once in one situation. But we didn't introduce the accidents in the French drinking guidelines.
Okay. Last question, yes.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in I mean, you did a lot of work on screening and brief interventions, and you were talking about, the participation in the WHO study. I followed that very closely, and it was a great work that you were doing across the different regions, implementing this. I wonder what has been the uptake in terms of the health services of this, of the guidelines, of the drinking guidelines. I know that there's a kind of a difference of time when, now you have some updated guidelines, but I just wonder exactly because the screening and brief interventions had as a basis, to talk about alcohol and to recommend where would be the level. So what has been, if you have any insights into what has been the uptake of the health services as a means to talk about the drinking guidelines and be a kind of a mechanism that would be used for that, or if it, basically did no, there was no success, had no role in that conversation of the drinking levels.
We are very disappointed because after that enormous job under the supervision of Nick Heather and published in 2012, a lot of work done. But afterwards, nothing happened at a large level. Nothing happens. In some regions, like Nouvelle-Aquitaine, there is a real network who works very lot on it. But we don't have a dissemination of what we call RPIB, SBI. Mm-hmm. We don't, and we are very. Mm-hmm. We don't do a study on that.
Yeah, maybe that's also a question for the debate, how and who should use the guidelines and promote the guidelines and what the health services can do better in this one. I think that's a good point for the debate later. Yeah, because we need to move on. Thanks a lot, Pierre.